Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Jennifer Fidel, the Director of Public Programming for the Assisi Institute, the International Center for the Study of Archetypal Patterns. And today is the fourth and final presentation in our complementary series by Dr. Michael Conforti, entitled Ravages of Oppression, Denial, and the Life of the Forgotten. And also, please look for Dr. Conforti on April the 23rd and 24th, as he will be presenting at the Young Society of Washington. So that'll be on the CC webpage for more information. Before we get started today, I'd also like to mention that on Saturday, April the 24th, we will be hosting Dr. Hans-Willy Edher, president of the Foundation for Jungian Psychology in Kuznat, and founding member of the Research and Training Center for Depth Psychology, according to C.G. Jung and Marie-Louise von Franz in Zurich. And he will be presenting a dream that he worked on with Marie-Louise von Franz, entitled A Dream, Memories, and Facts about Marie-Louise von Franz. Then the following Saturday, on May the 1st, we will have Henry Abramovich joining us from Jerusalem. He's a biblical scholar and senior training analyst at the Israeli Institute of Jungian Psychology in honor of Eric Neumann. He will be presenting Puzzling Moments in the Lives of Great Individuals, Why Jesus Cursed the Fig Tree, and Why Lot's Wife Looked Back and Became a Pillar of Salt. So we have Science and Psyche, the Confluence of Matter and Spirit, with our second in the four-part series coming up this Wednesday with Dr. Alvaro Geraldo. It is not too late to join this series. It is about, it's going to explore neuroscience, quantum physics, biology, and the relationship to the psyche and depth psychology. So that'll be on April the 14th. You can go to the Assisi website and look up all of these programs. The Abramovich and the ETA program may not be up until Monday or Tuesday this week, but you can certainly find Michael at the Washington Young Group and also Science and Psyche. Before we get started today, a few housekeeping notes. For the duration of this program, please keep your mic muted. We will not be taking questions today, but if you have any comments or reactions you'd like to share with Dr. Conforti, please type them into the chat box below, or you can email Annette at the CC office and he can receive any comments via the office. Also, reminding that we are recording today, you will all receive a copy of this recording, and so look for it around April the 15th. So I think that's all I have right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sylvia Barron, the Director of International Studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you so much for running such a wonderful public program. It's really wonderful to have such fabulous colleagues that are really bringing Assisi farther and farther into the outer world, not only in Brazil. Yesterday, we had a lovely conversation and presentation with over 200 people in Moscow, and I think Marina and some of you were on, as well as the about 500 people who are signed up and registered for this course. As you can see, the reach of Dr. Conforti's work is out in the world, and we couldn't be more pleased as the board of directors of the Assisi Institute. So, dorogi kolegi, dobro pajalovic. Carissimi colleghi, vi diamo una benvenuta dal cuore, y a los que hablan español donde estén les damos una gran bienvenida de corazón. This is the last of the series, and I think, Michael, I speak for all of us, both who are here and those who will be receiving, with deep gratitude for what you have brought us so far, from the beginning of looking at, when I said the unflinching eye, the way that Psyche set up the timing with the Passover and the Easter, setting the table for knowing about memory, the need for remembrance, and the power of truth, with last week's talk on Halina and how important it is. And I'm looking forward to hearing what has the power, what is powerful enough, just as powerful as truth is, to perhaps bring us into a life that can be filled with hope. Maybe not filled, but perhaps that can have, I caught myself, I have been paying attention, that perhaps there might be a power strong enough to change, to help us cross a threshold into a different field without forgetting the past. So now I have something I would like to share with you as part of the board of directors of the Assisi Foundation. As you know, the Assisi Foundation funded in full this conference that allowed us to reach an audience in Italy, in Latin America, Europe, and in Russia. And I think you have received the letter about asking for donations. And that's not something that we are normally very comfortable doing. I can tell you, you can just see Michael's face. It's really difficult because we do this work out of love. And we also do this work because it's important. So my fundraising experts say that when I do the ask, I should be very direct and say, please send us money to the comfort level that you're capable of. So I did that for my colleagues. But this is what I want to say to you from my experience and my life. When I was in the ministry of a denomination which had at its core belief the inherent worth and dignity of all living things, for the Advent series on Sunday nights, we would have a service of meditation, music, reflection. And when it was time for the plate to be passed around to collect money, this is what I would say. I would say, for those of you who at this moment have, please give. And for those of you who at this moment need, please take. Because in the Jewish tradition, it's both a mitzvah, which is a blessing, to be able to give, and it's also a mitzvah to receive. We cannot have one without the other. So I invite you again, for those of you who have, whatever it is, and you feel moved to give, we'll be grateful. And for those of you who need to receive this, please do that as well with heart and care and passion, because we need both poles, the giver and the receiver. And both are a mitzvah to God, to the holy, to mystery. So with that, and on behalf of the board of the Assisi Foundation, I thank you all for attending, and Michael, for you for really delving into this most important work.
Thank you, thank you. E anche chi toccare un momento parlo un po' siciliano, ok? Perché c'è un bel bicchierino nella mia vita adesso, importante dire, eh?
Sì, sì, sì.
Ma questo è un'altra giornata un po' tipico, ok? Una giornata. I'm kidding. I'm saying this is an important day for me to go back and speak some Sicilian, because there is a ubedu bichuridu. That's Sicilian for there's a beautiful baby that there's an addition to our family as of about 2 hours ago. So thank you. It's an incredible occasion. So another normal day, you get up at 4:35 in the morning, prepare for lectures, give a lecture in Brazil, okay, with wonderful people. Denise is part of that group there, actually one of the leaders in Brazil. Now we have this lecture and then a planned dinner, and then you have a grandson all in one day. So that's not a bad day, right? So for all my friends and all of you with the well wishes, and thank you so much, and I appreciate it. Well, this is the fourth in the series, and Sylvia, just explain one thing. So we're not going to do questions today, okay? Okay. We have a lot of material. Okay, Mark, you're on the call from Israel, and you made some important comments about Wiesel, and maybe later today you may want to share some of what you've been saying, because obviously you've been also touched very much by his life, and you've written some lovely notes to the Institute. So, Mark, one of our colleagues from Israel, thank you. We're going to go back a little bit from last week and then move forward, because the theme for today, I'm looking at my notes on the other screen here. Okay, so when I turn away, that's what I'm doing. We pretty much ended up last week when the main character goes to Kathleen's apartment. Yeah? And It's a very strange menage a trois. It's he and Kathleen and his grandmother. His grandmother accompanies him to an evening, a day, what could be filled with passion, but also it's empty in a lot of ways because he knows he doesn't love her. She doesn't know who he is, but he's going to go because he needs comfort. Sometimes, one needs, what are the proverbial sailors that need a port? They need somebody just to talk to. And I never forget the scene in A Perfect Storm. These sailors risk their lives every day. And they go to the local bar, the local watering hole, right? And they're all the old sailors, the old fishermen are there. And people just talk. You see one guy meeting a woman who's lonely, and they're both lonely, and they find one another. Well, he couldn't really do it. And his grandmother came back to him to remind him that there is love in the world. Now, in so many ways, coming from what his experiences have been, you would think every port has been eroded. And I spoke a little bit about it in my lecture this morning about transgressions and how it erodes so much in our life when we don't make it conscious. Now, Wiesel's is not transgressions he did. He was the recipient of transgressions. But we need an even better word. I mean, atrocities that the world has never seen and hope to God we will never see again. And as we're seeing throughout this book, he's taken over by memory. He's taken over by the past. The current moments are so often eclipsed. And the one major one, I don't think we talked about it directly, but the one scene, remember when he and Kathleen are walking in New York, right? And she sees that smoke coming from the chimney, and he says, how could you talk about romance and love? All I see is the crematorium and the ashes that fall on me, the ashes of the last remnants I have of my mother and my sister. How do you go into the world? And I think it's such an important piece of work we do where we don't find the euphemisms to make it better. I mean, I just read another piece that he wrote. He said, look, sometimes you want to tell somebody, okay, you were strong, you did make it, you did survive. I've learned over the years that's got to be conjoined with the other piece, which says, I don't know how you come out of this. And I think that's a place where many of us are afraid to go to say, look, I don't know how you survive. I don't know how you move into the future with hope. How, if you've ever read the autobiography, when he's having this horrible moment at the bris of his son, the circumcision. Why bring a child into the world? Why bring a child? We can understand it. And I think far too many trauma theorists want to look at this as somebody who's just caught. Oh, come on. Can you really say this guy's caught in the past? Can you say this guy? Can you really say, well, it's sort of a fear of attachments? That's why I wrote in the description of this whole presentation of this series that when we come to this degree of trauma, psychology is at a loss. All the words, all the theories, they don't think they take us far enough when it comes to this stuff. Remember the scene with Dr. Russell, which we're moving into today a little more, when Dr. Russell says to him, I'm angry. Remember that scene? I'm angry at you after he wakes up after the surgery. He says, you're angry at me. I'm the patient. I'm almost dead. Yeah, I'm angry at you because you didn't help me. He said, over 30 years or so of being a surgeon, every patient has helped me help them get better. I felt their spirit was there, wanting to be better. And remember, oh my God, this is one of the first things I remember when I read this. And I'd say I've read this book a number of times. He says, excuse me, doctor, I'll do it in a little Brooklyn accent, right? Excuse me, Dr. Russell, you got to be kidding me. I should be happy for what you did to me and did for me. So what did you do? Okay, you did your great surgery, great surgeon. Would you give me another couple of days? Maybe a year, maybe a lot of years. You know who's the ultimate victim in this? It's not you, my dear Dr. Russell. It's not you who's given me life and given me maybe a year, 2 years, 30, 50 more years of my life. Because you know what? You're really impotent. Death is the one that's going to win. So anything that you've done is going to be eroded by the reality that I'm going to be dead at some point, and it's going to undo all of your brilliant surgeries and all your medical procedures. It's over. So really, do you think I really should sit here and thank you for what you did? I don't see it, says our main character. Now, I'm sure that seems unthinkable for many of us, and I hope it does. I hope to God it does. This is nothing. I hope there's never been a sense of idealizing this material. It's not it, or glorifying. This is a tragic figure in many ways, who did go on, as we're going to see today, who made a life, had a family, and made, as Mark wrote to me in a letter, some absolutely wonderful, wonderful contributions around the world, which is why he got the Nobel Prize for all of his work with liberation and freedom of helping people. But I think if there's two notes I wanted to play throughout this series and highlight is, number one, for us in hearing this, to have the courage at times to feel hopeless as individuals and as therapists. Many of you are therapists and coaches and whatever. As a parent, you never want to feel that. Let's be real about it. As a parent, you never want to give up hope. Your beautiful daughter also that was on the camera before. You know, you never want to give up hope, and you fight with everything you have to make a life, every penny. I know a family that they spent almost everything they had to save their kid's life. And the father was a stepfather, not the biological. They gave everything to keep this kid alive and to do whatever they could to save. Look, so it's not about trying to minimize the importance of love and care and a sense of future, but there are times, and this is the big part. There are times when there ain't no future. The future is just wrapped up as a continuance of the present and the past. That's something we got to understand for a lot of people. Okay, so now what we're going to be trying to do today a little bit is look at what is his relationship to the self. We can use such highfalutin language here. And I think when we see his dialogue or monologues about God and with God, we can see what it is that's become a God, the God for him, and the God as the self. Excuse me. And remember that I mentioned a video that somehow mysteriously disappeared off YouTube. I still don't understand what the hell ever happened. It was von Franz speaking about God. It was fantastic. Maybe some of you could find, maybe our colleague coming from Switzerland to give the talk, maybe they know Jennifer. We'll try to find out. And she said, when asked, what, Dr. von Franz, what is God? And she says, God is what brings you to your knees. Whether it's awe, the music, the icons you do, Fleming, and the work you're doing now in Denmark that brings you to your knees, also you and the baby, whatever it is. It could also be the needle you want to put in your arm that brings you to your knees because you can't wait to get the next fix. Whatever our addictions are. And she said, that becomes our God. So let's look for a minute to find out what is it that has become God for Wiesel, because I mean, we just do this sort of blanket, oh God, God will help us, whatever. What is this God thing? And I think I mentioned also an article I've been wanting to write for years would be called, or will be called, not will be called, If Only God Was Made of Teflon. And now Russians, you know what that means, Irina and Marina? If maybe Anastasia, you could translate what that means, if only God was made of Teflon. You know that? Which is an important point here.
Если бы Бог был сделан из тефлона, this is the material Teflon. We know it, yes?
It's like when you make the egg slide right off the Teflon. Yes. Everything slides off.
Yes, we know it.
Okay, good. Because what we do is whatever we project onto God is sticks, unfortunately, what our beliefs are. So let's look at a few things that he says. So he writes on page 41, okay? He says, let me get the book. It'll be easy to read this in the book. Then. Hold on. He writes on the middle of the page on 41, if you're following along. That's the way it is. Shame tortures not the executioners, but their victims. The greatest shame is to have been chosen by destiny. Man prefers to blame himself for all possible sins and crimes, rather than come up to the conclusion that God is capable. God is capable of the most flagrant injustice. I still blush every time I think of the way God makes fun of human beings, his favorite toys. Okay, I'll read it again because it's very powerful. That's the way it is, he says. Shame tortures not the executions, but their victims. It is the greatest shame. The greatest shame is to have been chosen by destiny. Now, pause right there. One of the things that Wiesel has, written about is how could this be what's done to the chosen people? And if you haven't read it, read the book God on Trial, The Trial of God, where they say, look, you do this to us and we believe you, we believe in you, and we love and worship you. And it's a very powerful story. So in many ways, what we see here is a God that is malevolent, a God that creates this destiny for people. So when he says, been chosen by destiny, he's saying at some point that something has prearranged this drama. Something is prearranged because destiny is, we're going to get to a little bit when we talk about Plato and destiny here. Destiny is something we seem to be born with. What is he saying about, let's do two pieces, God and the self? If we say, I have this destiny that we've been tortured, and destiny is pro-offered by God. For him, the self has become, self and God become interchangeable. And so it ends up what he has begun to worship in many ways is a malevolent spirit in the universe, a malevolent God concept. How do you not just destroy yourself with that? And you could see, he writes his autobiography, there was at least one time he did seriously consider suicide. Many people have written about the accident say the accident really was in a suicide attempt. We'll never know for sure. Coming from New York, cabs do often run over people. It's something that happens in the city. So what do you do when your highest value is something that breeds malevolence? That's where we're going with this right now. The highest value you have, God, that supposedly loves us, bring this brand new baby into the world and all the things we care about, whatever, it also breeds tremendous malevolence. Then he goes on to say, where is it? I forget where he said it, but the point is, he said, philosophers and writers haven't wanted to look at this part of life, haven't wanted to look at the sense that there is a self that destroys. So again, if we're looking at sort of the center of his personality, it's something that's so wedded to the past because the past has been so devastating, he can't climb out. And that has become the sun in the sky. That's become the center of his universe. So you can understand why he would say to Kathleen, see, look, I don't want to talk to you right now. No, don't even touch me. It's my grandmother. It's the spirit of the dead that I care about. They're the ones that I relate to. I'm going to make love with you and touch you. I'm touching death. I can't do it. This is why he could say to Dr. Russell, we got to ask, what is the constellation in the psyche that would do these actions and would believe these things? You see what I'm getting at? Whatever we do is coming from something. And one of our faculty gave us a line years ago, one of the most brilliant lines that for 30-odd years the CC is built on. Okay, Dr. Irvin Laszlo, field precedes form. Field precedes form. What that means is that every experience is a manifestation of the properties of the field that you're in. So when we see behavior, we see fairy tales, we see any aspect of life, you got to say, what's the psychic constellation creating this? See what we do, we want to change it. Come on, you shouldn't talk that way. Kathleen loves you. Maybe she's not right for you, but you know what? She cares about you. You can give up your grandma. Oh, come on, you know. So when we go now to Dr. Russell, when Russell says, how dare you not thank me? What is wrong with you? I saved your life. And it wasn't egotistical. Russell's piece of this, when he says this to the character, Elijah, is not egotistical. You should praise me. It's not about that. He said, I've never seen this in my life. So if you look at this as a juxtaposition between the world of the Asclepians, healers, okay, wanting to make better. And remember, the Asclepians, they understood that when somebody came to them for help, an illness at its root was estrangement from God. Okay? In some ways, Russell is back and forth in understanding this. Does he really get what's troubling him or not? But so we see these two conflicting pieces. One that is just kind of hell-bent on making it better, and the other one that says that's confronting him with the truth. That's far greater than any medical practitioner could perhaps ever understand. So when we ask, you know, why would anybody not want to get better? You got to go back to what field are you living in when you believe that? What would make that little kid so depressed that they don't want to go out and play? They don't want to get pizza. They don't want to get cupcakes. They don't want to play with their friends or ride their bike. What is a constellation? And I would say, you know, so in terms of the work that we've been doing here for over 30 years now, if we made any contribution, which I think we've made a lot of them, it's really fleshing out the brilliance of what Laszlo said, feel precedes form, and the brilliance of what Jung gave us, which is the primacy of the archetype. And as Jung said, we'll never understand, we'll never see archetypes, we can't touch them and whatever. What we can see is the emanations. This story is the emanation of a particular archetype. Very disturbed one, very difficult and profound for us to understand. So when he says, I should praise you for saving my life, when ultimately you're going to lose. We're going to lose. Why can't you see this, Dr. Russell? Why can't you see that your victory is going to be short-lived? I mean, what kind of temperament, what kind of psyche does somebody have to believe this? But remember I mentioned contrapuntal moments. Two harmonies running together. When his grandmother comes back to him, what's coming back? If it was a dream, what's coming back? On one hand, we have why bother living? Death is going to overcome. Death is going to do it. The dead never give up the living. The dead never keep their secrets. All these lines he has in it, all these beliefs that he has, which are well founded for him. So you say it's going deeper and deeper into despair. Yeah. And then you see that contrapuntal moment. My grandmother never humiliated me. My grandmother loved me. She was the one I could talk to. I could sit on her lap. So somewhere you see benevolence is still, you know, breaking in a little bit, finding a way into this ironclad system of despair. It's coming in, as we saw with the accident, when he had the accident, the Dylan Thomas poem. So you see, it's like through that incredible darkness of Negredo, there is still a little bit of shreds of light that come in and make a difference for him. Now, of course, we're going to say, well, let's rally around that light. Let's rally around Dylan Thomas. Don't go gently into that night. Fight, fight, fight. Fight for your future. Well, can we also rally around Dr. Russell stuff? Isn't it great what he did? Again, I'm going to say one more time, it'd be a broken record. I don't care. If one cannot appreciate the despair one lives, it's going to fall on deaf ears. All of your hopes and whatever. For a child, it's a different story. But let me tell you a tiny story about his children. When you begin to study unconscious communication in children facing terrible traumas, what's not been talked about is how their unconscious presents the facts of the trauma. I'll never forget one story. A little girl had lost her mother, was losing the mother to cancer. And she says, Daddy, why How come that new tree in front of mommy's house is dying, the evergreen tree? How come it's dying? And the father was a student of mine, and he learned a lot about this word. He said, honey, sometimes things that are young and sometimes things that should be green and last a long time, they do die early. Do you realize what that little girl was saying? Her unconscious knew. I heard that story and I just wept because, you knew this kid was suffering, and she was also suffering because all the teachers and everybody, oh, come on, honey, you know it's gonna be good, everything's gonna be fine, God loves you, whatever. You don't feel it, and we can fill people with so many platitudes and all this. And you know what when the father said that to her, he said, Mike, maybe I'm nuts, but I felt there was some relief that she felt, even though he didn't say. And of course, yes, some trees die young and prematurely, like mama. He never had to make the connection. It seemed that his recognition of her unconscious truth was enough, that somebody heard. The next piece for today, and perhaps one of the major parts of this dream, one of the major parts of Wiesel's life, we find on page 71 and 72. So again, you have the book following along. Let's go there. The dream. We're going to call this the dream. Okay. This is a dream that tells about his life. Now let's read it together, okay? I'll read it out loud. He says in the middle of the page, I'm crying because I just saw God, a strange dream. I had gone to heaven. God, sitting on his throne, was presiding over an assembly of angels. The distance which separated him from me was infinite, but I could see him as clearly as if he had been right next to me. God motioned to me, and I started to walk forward. I walked several lifetimes, but the distance grew no shorter. Okay, my slip. There were two. Okay, I'll read that again. God motioned to me, and I started to walk forward. I walked several lifetimes, but the distance grew no shorter. Then two angels picked me up, and I suddenly found myself face to face with God. At last, I thought, now I can ask him the question that haunts all the wise men of Israel. What is the meaning of suffering? But awed, I couldn't utter a sound. In the meantime, other questions kept moving through my head. When will the hour of deliverance come? When will God conquer evil, thus allowing chaos to be forever dispelled? Go to the next page now. But you have it on the screen. Thanks, Sylvia. But my lips could only tremble, and the words stuck in my throat. Then God talked to me. The silence had become so total, so pure, that my heart was ashamed of its beating. The silence was still as absolute when I heard the words of God. With him, the word and the silences were not contradictory. God answered all my questions and many others. Then two angels took me by the arm again and brought me back. One of them told the other, listen carefully, one of them told the other, he's become heavier. And the other replied, he's carrying an important message. That is when I woke up, he tells the doctor. I wanted to tell him that I had just heard the words of God when I realized to my horror that I had forgotten them. Like the theme of forgotten, right? I had no longer knew what God had told me. My tears began to flow. Are you crying because it hurts? The good doctor said, because your physical pain. It doesn't hurt, I answered. I'm crying because I just saw God and he talked to me and I forgot what he said. I mean, this is one of the most powerful dreams I've ever heard. This is the dream about his future. This is the dream of destiny. Now, I want to frame this in a way that helps us understand why he didn't remember. If you read Plato, Plato speaks about destiny. And he said, he gives an image for destiny. He said, destiny comes to us as though on a sheet of paper coming down. Everything is written, your future, your family, whatever your life's going to be, it's all written on there. And as it gets closer, you can see their words. We can't make them out. It gets closer and closer. The words disappear. That's your destiny. Now, related to this, I had a patient that never read Plato many years ago. He had a dream of a piece of paper coming down from heaven, all written, all words on it. And as it got closer to him, the words disappeared. God's honest truth. You talk about an archetype of destiny, an archetypal dream. And this guy, like some of Jung's patients that had these alchemical dreams and stories, he knew nothing about Plato. And what Plato's saying with that story is that there is a destiny for us. And this is where the Grail comes in. You know, it's there, but you spend the rest of your life trying to uncover and see and find it. And, you know, another thing that's so powerful about this that I learned about 20 years ago, you know what word that is used interchangeably by Plato with destiny? Pattern. Pattern. Pattern and destiny come together for Plato. So instead of the archetypal study of patterns, so we call the archetypal study of destiny, which fits in many ways because we can often really discover what our destiny is by the patterns that occupy our lives. Okay. So here, this dream really shakes up the other perception of God as just a God of vengeance, a God that provides only horrible destinies for people, that plays with his human figures as little toys, playing with them, with giving them horrible things to live with and see how much you really could tolerate. This is a different God. And if you look at it as a sense of the psychic structure in his life, now there is a total, sort of a polytheistic psyche emerging. There are two gods, or two major dynamics in life. There is a dynamic of evil, there's a dynamic of good and benevolence. There are gods that, you know, when one wants to believe that God is all good, I mean, we're dead in the water with that one, because you'll never love God again. I had somebody tell me years ago, all the wonderful things in the world because of God, all the bad things are because of humanity. Okay, that's one of those convenient truths, you know. Where does humanity get this stuff from? We just make it up. We go to a box and pick it out. This dream is huge. This is the dream. He probably had this when he was, what, maybe 30-something years old. This is the dream of destiny. The reason he couldn't remember is the same reason that Plato tells us we can't read what's written on the tablets and they come down to us from heaven. We're not supposed to know what it is. I remember when my son was young, he said to me one day, he's like 7 years old, he said, Dad, I want to hurry up and grow up. And I thought, oh my God, I must be such a horrible father. He wants to grow up. He wants to get out of this child, wants to get out of this family. I said, Chris, what, you know, why do you want to grow up so quick? He said, I want to be what I'm going to become. I said, well, okay, there's my little Buddha coming out of this one, who's now today a father, right? There is a sense of destiny. For Wiesel, now there's a lot of people, we have time. There's a lot of pieces to the dream we need to work with. We have 4 more weeks over to the seminar. Jen, you got 4 or 5 more weeks? Okay, thanks. Yeah. We're going to do the Forgotten, the next book, after if we ever get through this one. Okay. The angels help them. Now, those of you that have read Joram Kaufman's work, he has a whole chapter in his book, The Way of the Image, on angels. And he said, angels are those psychic elements that translate the domain that we find ourselves in. The angel of motherhood, the angel of death. And he went on to say that over all the major opera houses in the world, there's often an angel on top. And we always, you know, and he said, you know, many of us want to think about the angel as a messenger. It's not so much a messenger. And he gives an example, which we've talked about in some of our classes. The angel Gabriel is a perfect example of about the archetype of angels. When Gabriel came to Mary and said, I've got a story for you. It's not a really easy one to understand. It's kind of bizarre, but I got a story for you about your life. Okay, you're 13 years old. You're kind of from a little quiet little village here, but you're going to be the mother of the Savior of the world. Okay. Okay. And you're going to give birth to this baby. Okay. It's a brilliant piece in the Bible. Because what they're saying is there is something that's able to articulate the dominance of our life. If you've ever had a mentor that can help you somehow like follow the breadcrumbs, not that they're putting down, but sometimes the mentor can see where your life is going. I had Dr. Kaufman. He did this for me in my life, and anytime I give a lecture, I always say a prayer in thanking him for what he did. I would have never been where I am today if it wasn't for his grace and then the love and the taking me under his wing. That's what angels are. Angels will say, if you want to read, go back, read the story of Angel Gabriel. Read the story of Raphael in the book of Tobit in the Bible. In the wonderful movie, It's a Wonderful Life, read about the angel. And ask yourself, okay, psychologically, what are they doing? Again, and the way he frames it, I mean, his language, Kaufman's language is a little bit awkward in it. He says, they articulate the coordinates of a given moment. Remember, he was a theoretical physicist before he became a Jungian. To put it to our language, you could say that the angel will articulate the nature of the archetypal field that is part of our life, or that we're in, that whatever field we're in. Your field is maybe as a writer, as a visionary, as an educator. Your field is somebody who just wants to give so much to people in the world or whatever. Your field is, yes, and the same with, I've had to say to somebody who was orphaned, I said, look, you've had one of the worst histories I've ever heard. It's remarkable you've lived the way you have and have made a relatively good life. You came into the world with tremendous adversity. That's part of it. And I don't know if you know the backstory, Sylvia and Jennifer and others in the community, why he wrote the story of the angel. It was the 15th anniversary for the CC Institute. And without me knowing it, some of the members of the community created, you know what a festive is? A festive is like a book that honors somebody. And they did a festive for the CC Institute and me. And he wrote the angel. I said, oh, it's a beautiful article. And he said, Michael, you probably don't understand why I wrote that. I said, you want to talk about angels? He said, you're so stupid sometimes. You're so dense. He said, the article was written because I wanted to thank you for what you've done. The work of a pattern analyst is the work of angels. This is not inflationary. It's not about God. It's not that. It's archetypal functioning. He said a pattern analyst, as well as a Jungian analyst, works to translate the material from the unconscious and speak about the domain of that archetype, the tendencies, the proclivities, the behaviors, the needs, the future. That's all part of the angel. So we see the angel takes him to God. So what you need there is not only the Dr. Russell says, why don't you help you get better? That's not the angel. The angel is not Kathleen. The angel in some ways was the other woman. I forget her name right now. What was her name? Anybody remember? Bonnie, what was it? The other woman? Okay. The other woman. She's the one that said, my God, this is dark. This is dark stuff. This is written by a man that had lost his heart, lost his soul, lost his desire to live. She saw him more accurately. The next piece, when he says, God, let me ask all the questions that the prophets have ever wondered about. Can you see the shift here between the God that toys with humanity and throws them into the furnace and does these horrible things, to the God that patiently says, how can I be of help to you? And again, if you see it as a psychic issue, there's something huge is turning in a psyche from malevolence to the presence of something that can be benevolent. It says, I love you. I want to help you. What can I do? And answering the question, you see, suddenly the self was interested in his question. Kathleen wasn't. Kathleen couldn't go there. This God can. And the God gives him all the time he needs. And at one point he writes, whether it was minutes or hours or days, I have no concept of time. I lost time. But he said, do you have any more questions? He said, I have no more. And remember what happened then when he gets up, the scene, when he gets up to leave? And I'll just editorialize a little bit. He gets up and he's unstable. He's sick. He's had a surgery, but he's still unstable. And the two angels rush to his side, one on the right, one on the left. And that's when they say, he's different. He's a little bit heavier. And the other one says he's carrying a message. Maybe we shouldn't know our destiny. Have an intimation of it, great. To begin to bring the provisions into our life that can help us actualize this, yeah. A mentor that can help you. If we can find it on ourselves, on our own, fantastic. But you see what he's given at that moment? He's being told his destiny. He's got a message. It's a message for humanity. So that dream came, he was maybe 30 years old. That dream, whether it's a real dream or fictional dream, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. His unconscious presented that story. The message he had for humanity was twofold. Non si può scordare. Mai. Non si può scordare. Don't ever forget. Don't ever, ever forget. The other piece is don't ever lose your faith. And that to me remains a baffling piece in his life. How, with all this, can you have any hope of benevolence? I think it's only one, for me, okay? One word that can answer that, it's got to be a miracle. Wonders of wonders, miracles of miracles. Remember the song in Fiddler on the Roof? It had to be a miracle for him that the flickers of hope were not extinguished. The flickers of a future were not extinguished. And he writes about the future here. And okay, you got it on the screen, Sylvia? The Nobel Prize, part of the speech? I don't see it here. Here we go. Yeah, thanks. I'll read from mine. I think I have a little more here. So this is another part of the acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize when he says, yes, I have faith in God and even in his creation. Without it, no action would be possible. And action is the only remedy to indifference, the most insidious danger of all. Isn't this the meaning of Alfred Nobel's legacy? Wasn't his fear of war a shield against war? There is much to be done. There is much to be done. There is much that can be done. One person, Raoul Wallenberg and Albert Schweitzer, one person of integrity can make a difference of life and death. Now, pausing for a second, that's also, aside from being metaphorical, it's also literal in his life. One person could have brought the bread that kept somebody alive, a blanket, spared you because they took the bullets out of their gun. So this is not only a metaphorical piece. One can make a difference of life and death. As long as one dissident is in prison, our freedom will not be true. As long as one child is hungry, our lives will be filled with anguish and shame. With all these victims, what all these victims need above all is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting. You see how we always come back to remembering, forgetting. What all these victims need above all is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting them, that when their voices are stifled, we shall lend them ours, that when their freedom The freedom depends on ours. The quality of our freedom depends on theirs. This is what I say to the young Jewish boy, wondering what I have done with his years. It is in his name that I speak to you and that I express to you my deepest gratitude. No one is as capable of gratitude as one who has emerged from the kingdom of night. We know that every moment is a moment of grace, every hour an offering. Not to share them would mean to betray them. Our lives no longer belong to us alone. They belong to all those who need us desperately. Thank you, members of the Nobel Committee. Thank you, people of Norway, for declaring on this singular occasion that our survival has meaning for mankind. That's what he brought into the world. He brought that into the world so you don't totally lose faith. And, I hope it's come out in the seminar that it's not all about the dark. That's why, I've done this. I've tried to be careful about it, how I present in the sequencing. And as I said in the beginning, the first two presentations, I intentionally left them devoid of hope. I wanted to present this work in the way he lived it and wrote it. Hope in that would have been premature. And I know it's asking a lot of me. It's asking a lot of all you. You didn't volunteer to come into this journey. I was thrown into this for other reasons, and you can't ask people to take this. But you begin to see that, again, hopefully as our sequence is going, if one can spend time and not just flee out of that world and, whatever, you live it and you can hear what it's like when you don't have hope, when you're in the grotto and you don't know there's going to be tomorrow. You don't know if there will be more bullets. You don't know if your mother will survive another beating. You don't know. Somewhere he's been an angel in my life. And I hope in some small way he provides something for your life and your work as well. So with this, we'll open maybe just a couple of questions, Sylvia. But this is a seminar I've wanted to do for many, 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 many years. Time wasn't right. And it's interesting, on today, the final one is the day I become a grandfather. And I want to remind you of a piece. I think I've said it before in one of the classes. When the day of circumcision, which I alluded to in the beginning today, when he said, why bring a child into the world? Look at the world today. Look what's going on. Look at the horrors. Genocide still exists, and on, all these terrorists. And even the rabbis couldn't quiet him. He said, this is the day to celebrate. The Jewish law says we must celebrate. He said, oh, right. Yeah, that wasn't going to hold him. That was not going to hold these forces back. It's only when his wife said, honey, if we don't celebrate the birth of this child, they win again. Don't let them win again. Don't let the enemy win again. We need to celebrate the birth of this child because the child is a symbol of the future. And I was talking, we had a wonderful group with the Russians yesterday, our Russian student. And, one of the things I added was, why, when I hear the news or I see the pictures of the little baby, why do I cry? I don't feel, and you realize it's not only personal, it's also a hope for the future that we share, that there is a next generation, that doctors could care enough to do whatever they got to do to bring the baby into the world and save lives and all that. It's not all malevolence. One of the sad things I'll say is, with life is when one is so rooted in the positive, contrapuntal. In the absence of a contrapuntal moment, we have manic defenses. The manic will take away real hope because it's built on sand, that house.
Thank you, Michael. And I think I can echo for everyone, we have to celebrate this child. It's incredible the way timing has been, waiting for this baby over the last several weeks And he, the grandson, the one who will take the Conforti name into the future, comes at the end of this incredible series to embody hope, to embody exactly what you're talking about. Yesterday when we were on the call, I think Irina and who else is on? Sorry. Marina, yes. We were all so taken when you were talking about the baby's almost there. You could see everybody, and I can't see all of you, is how everyone leaned in. We were all smiling. We were all going like this to really demonstrate the power of the fields that you're talking about, both the fields of trauma and despair and the reality and the field of new life. And if we don't celebrate this new life, they win. Whether it's the Nazis, the complexes, the demons. So thank you. And you're getting Mazel Tov. You know what Mazel Tov is, right? Exactly. Oh, lovely. I'm going to read this out loud so that the translators can also put it in there. Thank you so much for this beautiful series, Michael and team. How wonderful that a child is born today, so we can all celebrate with you and together. And Lewis says, you held him and his work, all of us, and your family like a fragile and tender child, at once at risk and at once filled with potential.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you have a beautiful something in Greek that I'm sure just means congratulations and blessings.
Well, it's been a joy for me on so many levels. What was it? Was it Hillary Clinton that said it takes a village to do it? Yeah, it does. I mean, look at all the people that we have. I mean, Jennifer, you're working your tail off to do this. Sylvia, again, putting in hundreds of hours to make this work. And I know it's done out of love. I know the compensation. Bonnie's teaching classes for us, and it's just wonderful to see. And again, this particular seminar is something that's been brewing for a long time. And how do you find a way to talk about it? When I first began talking about this stuff 15 years ago, it was too emotional for me. It was too emotional.
So go ahead.
I remember the first time I gave a lecture on this, and somebody, I didn't know who it was, he was actually a medical intuitive. He came up to me and said, "You're not back yet, are you?" I knew what he meant. He said, "You are in that field." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to help you. You need to have a wall around yourself a little bit to protect yourself." He said, "You're too open to this right now." And I was. So it's taken a long time to let this wine settle. And I hope so. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we started this with mentioning, Michael, I think it was appropriate that over time you have developed a stout heart, a steady hand, and an unflinching gaze. And as we continue to move through our lives, may we also maintain a stout heart, a steady hand, and an unflinching gaze, because something tells me that we will meet again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you very soon.